It's hot. Oh, here comes Mr. Cat, the producer. He's seen the cameras on. There's been a number of complaints and he's dealt with them, but he's still waiting for the cheque in the mail or the money in his account. Now, look, on a more serious note, symbolism. How important symbolism is in particular struggles. Because as human beings, it's very, very difficult for us to understand things on a wider scale. But if we've got some type of symbol, I mean flags are symbols, then it actually gives us an idea of a particular struggle. Now today, or this evening I should say, early evening, I'm going to talk about a tiny little campaign which has extraordinary ramifications because of the symbolism involved. Now, irrespective of where you live in Australia, what we've seen over the last 10 to 20 years is this gold-plated construction splurge, where construction companies seem to have governments by the short and curlies at the state level and have made hundreds, if not hundreds of millions of dollars profit from, in many situations, unnecessary gold-plated construction. And nothing highlights this more than the level crossing removal program which the current government has been carrying out for the last 6 years. And this particular program is interesting because of the change in legislation which occurred, which has removed any rights whatsoever that the residents have through the courts to oppose inappropriate development. So if you find yourself within a few kilometres of a transport hub, which is being designated as a growth area, well, basically it's open slather. And we found over the last 6 years in Victoria that everybody involved in a struggle regarding inappropriate development, especially in a transport hub, has basically been brushed aside. No legal recourses, no way of actually fighting back. And because they're localised small struggles, it's very, very difficult to get any major support. And usually local people, initially enthusiastic, but after a few months of being hitting their heads against a brick wall, they just basically accept it as a fait accompli. Now, a few weeks ago, I was asked to look at a small struggle that's going on in Beaconsfield. I think the Beaconsfield railway station, the railway level crossing there is, I think it's 114 or 124, or was it 110? I'm not sure, but it's over 100 in terms of seriousness, in terms of traffic congestion. Now, this particular railway station is about 50 kilometres from the Melbourne GPO. It's on the Pakenham train line. And every railway station on the Pakenham train line has now been redeveloped as a transport hub. Now, Beaconsfield, although it's only 50 kilometres from the GPO, it's a relatively quiet area. And the railway station is a relatively small railway station. It's got some parking for people who go into work. It doesn't even have public toilets on the railway station. It doesn't even have public toilets. And what the government is proposing, and it'll happen in the next 6 to 8 weeks without your support, and we'll talk about that in a minute. What it's proposing is it's going to build this monstrous, grotesque road bridge. That's right, a road bridge to overcome the level crossing. Now, this is an interesting area. I've had a look at it on a number of occasions now over the last few weeks. The level crossing is not congested. There's minimal traffic. More importantly, less than 70 metres from the railway station is a viaduct where there is a road which has been there for decades, which actually goes under the railway line. So, what's the beef? What's the problem? Well, the problem is very simple. In order to build this monstrosity, to overcome a problem which doesn't exist, in order to have this gold-plated development, two things need to happen. A historic home which has been there since 1888, about one of the few historic homes left in Beaconsfield, one of the original homes, needs to be flattened, although it's been meticulously renovated. And in my opinion, more importantly, a Bunya Bunya tree with a 5 metre girth, like this, a 5 metre girth, over 23 metres tall and 20 metres wide at its widest level, which is 140 years old, which can live up to 1,000 years, is going to be cut down. Now this Bunya Bunya tree is a symbol of Beaconsfield. Schools, businesses in the area actually use pictures of the Bunya Bunya tree as a symbol of where they live, Beaconsfield. So the government proposes, the Victorian State Government proposes to rip down this tree, demolish this house, to build a road bridge which is not even needed. And even if it's needed, it can be changed. Now Beaconsfield railway station is also near a very prominent, just across, 10 metres away, a designated wetland area which is important for the local birds. So the local people here have been involved in a campaign over the last year, and they've been ostracised, humiliated, ignored during that period. And what happened, and intimidated in many situations, which I won't talk about on this particular video, but you can find out from them. So currently, we've now reached the stage where the construction companies are doing test drilling on the site. No contracts has been let out. No offer has been made to the owner of the historic home. But without your support, this proposal will occur. Guineas to gooseberries, it will occur because the government has the legal right under current legislation to ignore the people who, it supposedly represents and makes legislation for. Now I'll talk about the Bunya Bunya a little bit because I've learned a lot over the last few weeks. Now the Bunya Bunya tree is indigenous to Australia. It's not indigenous to Victoria, but it is indigenous to southern Queensland and northern New South Wales. It's actually a close relative of the Wollonai tree, that very, very historic tree. It's sacred to the local First Nations people in southern Queensland and northern New South Wales. It was used as a symbol of gathering. Tribes would gather when the nuts were ready to eat. Trade would occur, discussion, problems resolved. But even more importantly, the Bunya Bunya tree has been in this country since the dinosaurs roamed Guana land 60 to 70 million years ago. It is a survivor. This is not some dying tree. This is a tree that will continue to grow, will continue to be a symbol of Beaconsfield, will continue to reach into the sky unless it's ripped out of the ground for this monstrosity. So what's so important about this tiny little struggle? What's so important? When push comes to shove, when all legal options are removed, when people are ignored ostracised, humiliated because they are against government plans, then comes a need for direct action. And the only way this house and tree will be saved is through direct action. I'm not talking about a violent direct action, but I'm talking about direct action which involves shaming the state into finding an alternative way of overcoming the level crossing issue. And there are many alternatives which it won't envisage. So what am I proposing? Well, the first thing, obviously, we formed a relationship with the local group. The local group is a Facebook page. The people are all volunteers. They don't actually have any money, obviously. They've worked very hard over the last year with no results, and the Facebook page is Save the Bunya Bunya Tree and Railway and Beaconsfield Railway House. Save the Bunya Bunya Tree and Beaconsfield Railway House. That's their Facebook page. Now, we're proposing two things which they were happy to take up, because obviously they are now desperate. And the only way this can be stopped is through your active participation. That's right, your active participation. It's a horrible word, isn't it? Active participation, asking people to become involved. Not just local, but outside the local area. Because this is more than a local struggle. This is a struggle against governments, the local, state and federal level, who have forgotten that their primary responsibility is to the people who elect them to office, irrespective of what political party they follow, whether independents or not. Their primary responsibility, they are representatives. And we see in this situation people running away from the struggle. People in authority, local politicians, state politicians, legislative assembly politicians, Victorian Legislative Council politicians, as if this is some lost cause. Well, it's not a lost cause. It'll never be a lost cause because of the participation of Victorians and participation of other Australians. So the first thing you can do is you can actually log on to their Facebook page and offer them some moral support. But there's more. That's right, like the bloke who's going to throw in the steak knives on the television advertisement, there's more. At midday, that's right, midday, the 2nd of April, Sunday the 2nd of April, there will be a community picnic underneath the Bunya Bunya tree and around the Bunya Bunya tree and around the historic home. Every single one of you are invited to come. Bring food and drinks to share. It's a good way of meeting the local group who's involved in this struggle, and also other local residents who are now flocking to the struggle because they now understand how important their participation is. Because ultimately democracy is not casting a ballot every 3 to 4 years and sitting on the sidelines and saying tut tut. Democracy is every day being involved in struggles to ensure that those promises that were made, to ensure the life of that particular community comes first. Not construction companies, not construction workers, because let's not forget, the old workers' struggle, we just had Labor Day, which masquerades as Moomba these days. The old labour struggle was 8 hours work, 8 hours rest, 8 hours recreation. And it doesn't matter how much money you make as a construction worker. The fact is, if there is not the ability to have recreation for your family and friends and children and grandchildren, there's no point. So we encourage you to come to the picnic. Tell your friends about it. Make it go viral. Now the beauty is that the 2nd of Sunday the 2nd of April, is also Grand Prix Day. So if you want to escape from the noise of the cars and come to a quiet activist picnic, that's the day. Now you think to yourself, oh, it's just too far away. Well, it's not. It's 50 kilometres from the Melbourne GPO. You take the Pakenham train and in 45 minutes you can get from the CBD, Beaconsfield station, and then you walk maybe 70 metres to the Bunya Bunya tree and the historic home. That's all it is. A train ride. A Sunday afternoon picnic. See the rest of the city. Now obviously not everybody will be able to make it, but hopefully some people outside that local area will be able to make it to offer support. Because as push comes to shove, the direct action may require us to become involved. I mean, there are residents who are willing to chain themselves to the tree. But obviously, as we see in the past, a few people chaining themselves to a tree achieves little. But hundreds, if not thousands, gathering around to protect the tree is a different matter. To protect the tree and the railway house. The next thing we want to do, and which we've begun doing, is a hashtag. Hug the Bunya Bunya. That's right. The hashtag is Hug the Bunya Bunya. The local committee and we want people to go down there. Doesn't matter when you go down there. Can be on a weekday, can be on a weekend, can be in the morning, can be at night. Take a friend or a selfie stick and take a picture of you hugging the Bunya Bunya. And then put that on your social media. Put that on your social media and explain to people this is not just about a struggle about one tree, but this is a struggle about governments listening to local people, working for the benefit of local people. And if you know any celebrities in inverted commas, and obviously you're all celebrities, but if you know any other celebrities, singers, dancers, writers, people, you know, on the box, what do they call them on social media? Influencers. Encourage them to come down and see the Bunya Bunya tree. Because it may not be there long. Hug the Bunya Bunya tree and put it on their social media site. If enough people do this, we can win this struggle. This is the last level crossing on the Pakenham line that will be removed because it's the one that's least needed to be removed. It's all about the government wanting to ride roughshod over local residents, doesn't care how it does it. This is the third term the Victorian State Government now has, and when governments, you know, reach a third term, when they've been in office over 5 or 6 years, they tend to think they're, you know, all-powerful, almighty, and everybody else should stand aside. Well, this time, we, with your help, will not stand aside. This is a symbolic struggle. Not just about a historic house, not just about a Bunya Bunya tree, but a historic struggle about the purpose of government at the local, state and federal election. And it's about time government in this country began seriously to look at the needs, wants and the future of this society. So, once again, come to the picnic, Sunday the 2nd of April, midday, bring your own food and drinks. Secondly, if you can't come to the picnic, go down there, make a day of it. Take a picture of yourself hugging the tree. If you haven't got any friends, take a selfie stick. I'm sure you can find a selfie stick somewhere. And the fact is, the more people follow the hashtag Hug the Bunya Bunya, the greater the chance that the local group, the Save the Bunya Bunya Tree and Beaconsfield Historic House Group or Historic Home Group will succeed in their struggle to preserve something which, although intangible, represents decent, hard-working people's desires to live in an environment which is conducive to their happiness and the happiness of their friends, families, children and grandchildren.